Okay, so we've got a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Robin here. Robin, you've been very entrepreneurial. You've been in a lot of different areas. You're in the outdoor space now. You were in the apparel and footwear business before. You also been in genomics, which is a completely different area. I mean, you've had a lot of success. So I'm excited to have you here again to your journey and what you're building.
Thanks for having me on, Ben. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I first love to just kind of take a step back and just understand how you became kind of entrepreneurial, how that entrepreneur spirit kind of happened, what led to it.
Um, I mean, it depends on if, like, I always say, do you want the recent version or the old version? I mean, if I go all the way back to like even when I was like in high school and middle school, like I was the kid that went and bought candy at 50 cents and sold it for $1. Like it started pretty early. Like I sort of could see where you can sort of put supply demand together. You can create some really interesting dynamics, right? And so, but fast forward, I spent most of my sort of younger life racing bicycles, and then went into finance, like for my degrees, and spent almost a decade at Reuters, and I was at American Century and Wellington on the finance side. But it really, I think there was a lot of moments in there as I was building products for Reuters and others where I would say it was sort of intrapreneurial. It was like I built an advisor platform for Reuters called Horizon that was for financial advisors, and basically like product managed the thing all the way from start to finish. And there's many financial advisors that use it today. And there were, I built risk management platforms and was really like genesising it from all the way from like other tools that we might have seen to like getting a tool that like an investment manager or somebody would be using, an analyst would be using on a daily basis. But I think after I left sports as a kid, I was always like, I would love to do something at the intersection of like, fitness or sports, business, tech, like that whole thing. And so when the idea for MapMyFitness, I was in Europe on a cycling trip in 2005, and we were just sitting around at dinner one night after riding, 100 miles that day or something. And everybody was just like, oh, like, be great if I knew all these roads that in Switzerland, and, with next time I come here and maybe you can't come with me. And I was like, there's like guidebooks, but there's not like a way for me to create a route and send it to you, Ben, like just an easy way to do that. And so, I think that like it's sometimes like I would say necessity and spark, right, that create the moment when you sort of transition into entrepreneurship. And I think my family were entrepreneurs, like, my dad and mom were like, antique furniture dealers, and, just like they like, so I kind of was a little bit it was funny when I went into finance, my parents were a little bit like, what? Like, what? I don't understand. Like, that's not like a typical path for our family, so to speak, And so, when I founded MapMyFitness and, had the chance to sort of build something from scratch to obviously selling it to Under Armour, and we had a lot. I mean, Ben, I always say like timing is everything. You have to execute well, but like if you are executing well in a really bad environment, it doesn't matter. Like you can get crushed by the markets and the macro picture and all of that. And, when I think back to MapMyFitness, like we were just really, our timing around having 2 of the first 100 iPhone apps was just incredible, right? Like MapMyRun and MapMyRide were apps number 98, 99 in the store in July of 2008. And, like and we benefited from that. Like, I mean, I bought the company back from Under Armour last year, and we're still benefiting from that. Like we're still benefiting from the App Store rankings and how the App Store works in terms of organic free downloads, right? Like MapMyFitness is still doing 300,000 plus downloads a month for free, right? Like no marketing, right? And so like that timing, the story I always tell about Kevin Plank calling me at Under Armour was like, I'm sitting there and, we were raising some capital for our Series C and for MapMyFitness, and we had some offers come in. Like Google Maps really wanted the data. They were like, we would like to have all this underlying data. I kind of felt like that was a pathway to shutting the company down and just using it for data. And I didn't love that. You know, we had an offer from United Healthcare that I was like, oh, I don't know if I can sell the business to a healthcare company. And, you know, and then Kevin calls me out of the blue and he's like, well, you know, what are you doing with this? And I said, well, I'm trying to build a big digital sports brand. And I went and met with them and the team and just was really impressed with what they were building. And, you know, 6 weeks later, we had a deal to buy the company for $150 million. And so it was like a really, and that's a, like, especially for a new entrepreneur, in my journey at that time, like getting validation from a strategic like Under Armour buying your business is like it's everything. I mean, you're like, wow, I did it, I made it, like that. Like, look at the validation somebody's saying they're going to buy my business. You know, in retrospect, like there were lots of pluses and minuses. I mean, you know, sometimes people ask me, you know, would you, if you did it over, would you sell it? And my answer now is no, because I think it would be an even more successful business if I had just kept it. You know, but you know, that's hindsight. I mean, you can't go back and change anything. But that's sort of how I got started in the journey. And you know, now you know, what I'd say, Ben, is like I can't even imagine, you know, what's Elon saying about like, you know, starting a startup is like eating glass and getting punched in the stomach all day long. Like, I know it sounds funny. I can't imagine waking up and not eating glass and getting punched in the stomach. I love it. Like I love the challenges, the diversity of the things that you have to think through, the process of building. You know, frankly, I even a little bit like the scrutiny. I like proving the doubters wrong, and you know, and by the way, and frankly, sometimes failing is like the best thing that can happen to you, whether that's on a micro level for a specific product or a thing that you're doing, because you know something comes out of that that's like maybe even bigger than what you know you had kind of you know planned in the beginning. And so yeah, I mean, I absolutely love building. I love the people. You know, I love building teams. So yeah, I don't ever think about doing anything else.
So, what was the time like at Under Armour? I mean, you were helping to shape what digital looked like at the company. How did that help you think about just entrepreneurship? You know, because it was a very different kind of role than what you were doing before and what you've done after.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, being part of I mean, the one thing about big companies and Under Armour at the time was certainly over 10,000 employees. You know, and digital was very new for Under Armour when I got there. And you know, that's you know, Kevin. I think it was we were the first acquisition Under Armour had ever made. MapMyFitness was, and you know, I quickly realized that you know there was like you know you're still, even though you're an executive like Kevin, I think at the time had 8 direct reports, and each one you know were running big P&Ls you know across the board. You know, like you know I was running ecom and all of connected fitness, and we were launching hardware, and we were you know we spent almost another $1 billion on acquisitions total, like with MyFitnessPal and Endomondo and some other stuff that we bought. And you know, but you're still in an organization where you're effectively sort of fighting for resources with other teams, and that team might be a footwear team, that might be a you know, because everybody's you know in some ways, even in a big company, everybody has you know to meet earnings and the financial goals and everything, everybody has limited resources, right? So it's like that process is you know it's certainly, I would say, different than running a very small startup like a you know the 100-person startup that we sold to Under Armour. Um, but there's similarities too, in that you know you're still kind of thinking through you know the product and the consumer angles and the marketing and the brand um, and I just really enjoyed my time there. I mean, you know, I thought the team at the time was, you know, we had a lot of amazing things going on. Like I mean, whether it was the sort of women's division and what was happening with women's apparel at the time at Under Armour, whether it was the shoe initiatives that we had to really get into running and some other categories. We launched hardware. You know, we had what was called Health Box, which was like a scale, a heart rate strap, and a wearable that we launched with HTC. And that, just that process was super interesting for me. We launched a connected shoe that had a chip in it that synced directly with MapMyRun, which still does today. I mean, the hover products that are out there still sync. We have hundreds of thousands of users on MapMyRun that are still syncing those shoes. And so it was just a really exciting time for the company. It was obviously in a huge growth phase, which is always fun. I sort of say it's way easier to be part of a startup that's growing and growing fast, or a big company, than it is being at one that's like this, right? Because if you're flat growth wise, there's a lot of people tugging at the strings of who gets resources and why and things like that. So from that perspective, it was awesome. And I'm a huge sports fan. I'm a huge football, college football, basketball, and I got to go to everything. I mean, Ben, I was at every major sporting event. It was awesome. I mean, it was just it was incredible. So for me, it was a little bit like a kid in the candy store. And, Kevin and I got along well. And, I just texted him the other day about some stuff. And, no, it was a privilege, frankly, to work there at that time and be through that process. But I also think after 3 years, I was very much it felt like it was stagnating a bit. And I kind of wanted to get back to the entrepreneurial journey and, something a little smaller. And so that's kind of what I worked through was okay, well, I can't be in the fitness category for a couple of years because I had a non-compete. So I was well, I'll go, I'll see what else is out there. And I thought healthcare was really interesting. So I got recruited by Warburg Pincus and Illumina to run this consumer genetics company called Helix, which still, in some ways, it seemed, to be clear, it was very different in that, learning molecular biology and really understanding what's going on with genomics was very interesting. But it really was about building consumer products that interacted with the data and unlocked the data. And we had a lot of partners. We had over 80 partners at one point: Mayo Clinic, Semaphore, Mount Sinai, National Geographic. And so it was cool. It was a really, and at the time, my chief science officer now is the CEO of the company, doing really well. I'm still a shareholder and very interested in their outcome down the road. But I really wanted to get back into the outdoor space, and I just felt like there was a very big opportunity to kind of roll up and sort of what was hyper fragmented, both in media, still in maps, I'd argue in the sort of, registration, travel. It's just a very bifurcated, fragmented experience for the average outdoor adventure consumer. And I felt like there was sort of an opportunity to bring that together under one umbrella.
So what did that look like kind of phase one? Just building that.
It's funny, I have this napkin where before I started the company, I was already talking to people about this is this model of this flywheel about first you inspire people through content, then you activate them through helping you, Ben, find a trail or an event or go on a trip. And then, ultimately the celebration part is you share all your photos from your Yellowstone trip with your friends or your family, and they're oh, I want to go there, and so that sort of that sort of flywheel effect that happens for the consumer around those things was something I was talking about early. But the first acquisitions largely were in media because they were very distressed. They were, these were businesses that were, essentially going out of business, and they needed kind of they needed to think about it digitally. They needed to think about what do you do with the print when print is declining, very, very steadily and fast. And so, we bought 2 media businesses. As part of that, we got a film business, which Warren Miller Films, which is 77 years old. We're still producing the film every year and doing a theater tour. We bought a photography business called Finisher Picks that does event photography. So if you go run a marathon, we take your photos and you buy them, at the end. And at that point, the business was about 150 people. It was about 50 million in revenue, maybe a little bit less than that, 45 million in revenue. And, I was kind of it was basically all the employees were in the Denver Boulder area. And I was kind of this great lifestyle business. My wife and I had moved back to Boulder. And then, I would say 21, like 2021, the ability to raise capital, Ben, was just like, it was like shooting fish in a barrel, man. It was just like, it was crazy how easy it was. It was like everybody wanted to give you money,
I remember.
Yeah. And so, we raised a lot of capital, and we had the chance to buy outside magazine, outside television. And I really, like, my feeling was, having interacted with outside most of my life, that I was like, that's the best brand in the category. It's got to be outside. Like, if you're really building a consumer outdoor business, like, outside's the best brand. That I got to have that brand. So we rebranded the company. Then we started buying some mapping assets like Gaia. We started, we really started building this like shared platform architecture where, single sign-on, single user database, single membership, and sort of layering all of this stuff together in sort of one ecosystem. And, that was sort of the catalyst, like, I don't know, that year in 21, we bought 19 businesses that year. So it was a lot of M&A. It was a lot of, like, at one time we had like 14 financial systems. We had like 14 CMSs. We had, we had a lot of work to do, just the blocking and tackling of like putting all the pieces together, and that's really, and then, what most people, it sounds like you've been sort of in this sort of, everybody who was raising capital or was building businesses in 21, it kind of felt like, man, is it always going to be this easy? Because this is just unbelievable, right?
It completely changed.
Yeah, I know. Everybody, everyone got punched in the face. Like, it's like, inflation goes to, early 80s, 1970s type of inflation. You got interest rates that skyrocket. You got, things like, we had 100% of our capital as SVB when it collapsed, as an example. Like, I actually was like, I don't know if we're going to be around on Monday. That's how bad it was, because we had all of our capital there. And by the way, most of our venture capitalists had all their capital there too. Right. So like, they couldn't even give me more capital because they couldn't get access to their capital either. So, things like that happened. And, I think this last, I think the tariffs last year is certainly, we had a great year last year. We grew revenue by 23% last year on a, fairly sizable business. And yet, tariffs definitely took at least $10 million of business away from us last year. So it's just like, I don't think most people don't understand how hard it's been to be an entrepreneur the last specifically 4 and 5 years. Like, I say this all the time, Ben. If I had started this exact same company, I'm saying, like, same model, same everything. I had started this exact same company in 2011. I'd already be public. Like, do you know what I mean? It wouldn't even be a question, right? But this is a very different time. And so, you have to adapt. And I think as an entrepreneur, you have to figure out how you're going to navigate and, frankly, like, retain your team and keep growing. And, it's tricky.
So what's your biggest focus right now with this? You've got a great brand, you've got an ecosystem built out, it's integrated, quite nicely. People know, I want to do something outside, I know where to go. What do you need to do at this point besides grow revenue?
Well, I think if you talk about it like in baseball innings, I think from a full integration, like making it so seamless for the consumer from, reading an article or watching a video to, booking a trip or, finding the trail in your backyard or those types of things. I think we have more, like, we're in the second or third inning still. Like, we have a lot of product work to do to continue to make it more and more seamless for the consumer. I think we're like, we've obviously, even in the last year, we acquired my old business, MapMyFitness, and then we acquired another company in the travel space called Intopia on the adventure travel side. And so we're still integrating things. It's not like all the acquisitions happened in 21 and we're kind of done with the integration. We still have more to do. But I would say the biggest focus right now is just like, how do you build a business around reoccurring revenue. And, if I go back, 4 years ago, 70% of our revenue was from advertising, and very like, advertising is tough business. It's like up and down every quarter, every month. It's like you're fighting for every dollar, right? And, today advertising, we've grown a lot since then, but advertising is only 40% of the business and reoccurring revenue is 60%. So like the big focus for us is how do we continue to grow our reoccurring revenue to create stability for the employees and the ability to invest and, grow the business. And so like, number one goal is grow consumer subscription, grow the SaaS businesses, and frankly, just kind of like, maintain the ad business, right? Because it's like everybody's coming after it. Everybody. It's retail media networks. It's YouTube. Everybody's coming after all those ad dollars.
Yeah. It's the ad space has always been very competitive, but it's even today it's become it's just become more competitive, and everybody's fighting, especially with agentic ads now, and that's a whole different layer too. So I get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. In some ways, it's easier than ever to start a business.
Yeah.
Like even from the legal perspective to the filings, to the finances, to the, product development, to engineering, it's easier to build a business. What is harder than ever is getting people's attention. Like just getting audience is like really just hard.
Yeah. Well, there's so much coming at them now. The barrier to entry is so low.
Yeah. And who knows in a couple of years with all this, AI, just like like everything from ads to video to, even generated worlds. Like, it's not like the volume is going to slow down. Right.
Yeah. Robin, what are your biggest goals at the moment? And like, what is the big picture vision for this?
Well, I think ultimately we still would like to be a public company, so how do we continue to build both organically and inorganically through acquisition to get to that spot as an organization? But I'd say right now, like in 2026, it's really around how do we continue to improve the sort of end-to-end user experience so that they don't want to go somewhere else. They want to come to us for all of the sort of connectivity tissue to spending time in the outdoors. So I would say like the company goals around the product and, sort of again, revenue and things like that, those are obviously big goals. I think on a more macro level, a lot of like, I just got back from the main tourism conference speaking. And I would just say like one of my big goals right now is just sort of like drawing awareness to how important spending time in the outdoors is. Like, we have some really, really disturbing statistics. Like a kid born today will spend 30 years on a screen in their lifetime. The average kid in the US is only spending 7 minutes a day outdoors. These things are really bad, Ben, for your health and wellness, whether it's your mental health, your physical health. And so I would just say like from a really macro perspective, I'm trying to spend a lot of time talking about the benefits of spending time in the outdoors and why people should, almost like I think about fitness and activity like finance a little bit. Like, if you think about the power of dollar cost averaging, like if you put $1 into a stock every week for the next 30 years, like the compounding of the compounding of that is just crazy what happens, right? Well, health is very similar. Like I can't cram to run a marathon. I can't cram to stay, I can't lose 10 pounds overnight, right? Like, and so having people think about how they pay themselves first. Like, I don't know what you do first thing in the morning when you get up, but like I'm either outside at the gym. Right. Exactly. You're paying yourself first. You're like, I gotta go
outside to get there.
Exactly. Right. And so like, those are the things that to me are so important. And so I'm trying to draw like a lot of awareness to like that and why, I think tech is a really double-edged sword. Look, you and I couldn't have even done this 10 years ago, right? Or 15, like it's, so like there's a lot of pluses, but there's a lot of minuses. And I think that, I don't, if you think about the last 20 years, social media and mobile, I think we can see the mental, health impacts, the physical health impacts, the never as a human race have we ever spent so much time indoors as we do now. Because like, even if you think about what happened during COVID is a lot of people did spend time outdoors. So a lot of the media was like, oh my God, everybody's spending time outdoors. Everybody's spending time outdoors. But the reality is we stopped commuting, and commutes used to be a big time of when people spent time in the outdoors, like whether it was going to the bus stop, to the train stop, all of those things. And so post COVID, like, yeah, some people have returned to office, but a lot of people are still working from home. And so, now with Amazon and Grubhub and, like Uber Eats and all these things, like you don't even need to leave your house, Ben. Like you could sit inside all day long if you want. And you're kind of like, oh, did my job, got my food, took care of my family, whatever it is. And I think that's something that I like, at least from my perspective, we are part of nature. Like, humans are part of nature, and we need to spend time touching grass, man. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Like we need to be like with our feet, connected to the planet. And then, we got to take care of it too. I mean, it's, I don't know about you. I don't think I'm getting off this rock. I think I'm stuck on this rock. So we got to kind of take care of it.
Yeah. Robin, that was all the questions I had. I appreciate you taking the time and doing this. I think it's great what you're doing. I think we need to be more outdoors. I go on, 5 walks a day at times
Love it.
because I find it so important. And I think I've been outdoors every single day. So I'm totally aligned with the mission. And it's great to have this ecosystem. And I'm excited to see where you'll take it. Thanks for coming on.